welcome to my podcast. I'm in New York, which is why this fabulous brick backdrop might not look familiar. I'm going to waste no time. I'll pre-record an intro to this episode, but I just want to get straight to it because I'm in New York and I'm very excited about my guest on today's podcast. I've talked about him on the podcast before. I've been a fan. Give it up for Xiaoma.
Hey, what's up, Allie?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you on.
Xiaoma, B2W.
Xiaoma.
Yeah.
How? Okay. What was
or
I
some
saying?
people say Xiaoman, which is like not really what. But I'm like, if you say Xiaoman, it's like, I don't know. It's like the cool fan nickname.
So I was going too hard with the zh.
The zh, yeah.
So it's more of like
it's similar to how when they like say what's like the name of the capital of China.
Beijing.
Beijing, right? But that's what they say in America, but really it's Beijing. So
wow.
It's like I know, it's one of those things where you're like, what the fuck? I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
I feel like there's a lot of that stuff in like in Japan or like with the way that we pronounce certain things.
Sure.
And then how they're actually pronounced.
Right. I'm sure we butcher those pronunciations up so bad.
So what's the difference between the J in Beijing and with Xiaoma?
No, it's a different letter. Xiaoma is more technically in Chinese is like a xiao, it's like a weird kind of like lispy, like your tongue is super dental up there with your teeth, like xiao. But if you just say like most people just like the closest approximation in English would just be like an sh sound.
Okay.
So Xiaoma.
Yeah. Does that name mean anything?
It means little horse.
Little horse.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, if you put it into Google Translate, it means like I get like pony.
Oh, you're like a little pony boy.
Yeah, I know. So every so often I'll get like people or like just emailing me like from
Hey,
everywhere,
pony.
like from Mexico, being like "Hola, pony," you know.
They're just translating everything.
Google translating my name. Yeah.
That's so funny. And
so it's cool.
Like when you introduce yourself to people who speak Chinese or Mandarin,
right?
That doesn't make sense, right? People don't speak Chinese. They
you can say. I mean, so first of all, Chinese people themselves call the language. Like in the Chinese language, the word is Zhongwen, which literally means Chinese.
Okay.
So but technically, like there's like a number of Chinese like it's analogous to Europe.
Yeah.
Where like if you say what is European as a language, like every country in Europe has its own, like local language.
Okay.
But the same really is true in China. But the thing is, in China, everybody speaks Mandarin. So usually in Chinese, if you say the word Zhongwen, which means Chinese, it kind of refers by default to Mandarin.
Okay, great. So when you're introducing yourself to people who speak some dialect of a Chinese language, Mandarin, whatever it may be, do people know that you're saying your name, or do they think you're like, I'm Pony?
Well, I mean, how do you say it? It's like, I guess there's certain nicknames in English, like, oh, I'm Grace. If you introduce yourself as Grace, people aren't thinking like, oh, wow,
she thinks really highly of herself.
Like you were blessed by God. Like,
yeah.
Then Grace, okay. So I guess there's like a mental separation you make
sense.
between.
You know how like everyone nowadays, I feel like people my age, when they have children, they give their children the wildest names. They will literally name their child Pony or like Forest,
Apple,
Sunshine,
River.
Yes.
Some celebrity had River recently, and I was like, yeah.
I'm on board with it. I think some of the names have gone too far, but there's some that I'm like, okay, that's unique. Do you know if that is happening in China or with like other cultures? Because I feel like you meet a lot of people from different places.
Yeah, I don't.
Or is that just an American thing?
I think it's an American phenomenon. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd probably say it's an English-speaking world phenomenon. But there has been an increase in name diversity over the past like if you look at like the percentage of people who are named like the most popular name, like the number one most popular name in any given year, like 50 years ago or 100 years ago, it was like 20% of all births were like John, like the first name, you know. But then now, even if you take the most popular name, like whatever it is these days, like Cody or Jaden or like Emma or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like that, it occupies a small, like it's like 5%, or 4%. So there's more diversity these days.
I was just looking at what the most popular name is for women.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are naming their female children Luna. It's it's the number one name in like not even just in America. It's like the number one girl's name all over.
Yeah.
It's wild.
That's cool, man.
I feel like I should give a little intro if people don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, I feel like everyone has at least seen one of your videos. If they haven't, their YouTube algorithm is doing them dirty. I don't know how I came across your videos, but you make, and also, do you prefer to be called Xiaoma?
I don't care.
What's your birth name?
My English name is Ari.
Ari.
So
Love that. Good Jewish name.
Exactly.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you make YouTube videos. You're a content creator, some might say. And how long have you been speaking Chinese?
Over a decade.
Yeah, because you learned Mandarin first, and you studied in Beijing.
Yeah.
We talked. So, okay, hold on. I need to like really give a breakdown. So you make videos. You started out by making videos of you in Chinatown. You would go into like a market or a restaurant and you'd, order in English.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, at a certain point, you'd break it down. You'd whip out the Mandarin.
Yeah. Probably the most likely video that people have seen
Nail salon?
of me. No, the restaurant one. So if you're listening to this and you're like, who is this guy? Maybe you've seen, probably at some point, Facebook or like YouTube has recommended this video to you of
I was
like,
gonna say, is it
white guy in a restaurant speaking English, and then all of a sudden busts out the perfect Chinese, and people are like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Right. So that video went extremely viral, and
I was gonna say, is it the video of you ordering fish balls? And I was like, that could be any. That could be a number.
I order fish balls in many videos.
Yeah, I've never had fish balls.
Yeah, it's a Fujianese thing.
Okay.
It's popular in Chinatown.
So you start. I mean, it's so fascinating because I think the reason people like it so much is I think everyone loves a good element of surprise.
Yeah.
Which your videos have. But I also think there's something so fascinating about learning a different language because America is kind of an entitled place where like you go to most countries and they speak some or their second language is English.
Yeah.
So I think as an American, to speak a language like Chinese, where they don't really teach that in high school, it's like French or Spanish. I think it's so fascinating for people.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. Sometimes people like lament the state of language education in America or say like, oh, Europeans will say, oh, you Americans are so stupid. You only speak, I don't think like that. Like, I think there are like, there's plenty of good reasons to not learn a language, right? Like it takes a lot of time. Like, and there's also, if in your whole country people only speak one language, like it's like, why bother, right? I think that's a perfectly valid response. I mean, just look at Japan too. It's another example of like a country where pretty much everyone in Japan only speaks Japanese, and that's fine. Like, there's no real reason for people to speak a language other than Japanese in Japan in most cases, and I think the same is true for the U.S. But for me at least, and this wouldn't necessarily hold for everybody, but like learning another language to the level that I have has just enriched my life in so many ways, and it's been I mean, obviously I've built a career out of it right now, but just apart from that, like it's just giving me like a second soul in a lot of ways.
Did you have like a regular job before you were making the YouTube videos?
Yeah. I worked so out of college I worked for 3 years at a hedge fund and then doing financial analysis, and then after that I switched to software and I was working as a software engineer for 3 years, and I was doing the videos on the side, and at some point I felt like if I really just like went, because I was having so much fun making them, and every so often I'd get one that would go viral, and I was like, what, if I just really like focused on this, I think I could do something out of this, like as a business. So I quit my job and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for this for at least a year and see what happens. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, like I had some amount of savings, so I was like, all right, I'll do this for a year or two, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back and go get a job in software. And for a year or two, it wasn't working. Like I wasn't really making any money. Occasionally I'd have these viral videos, but it was like it wasn't sustainable. So I was constantly like, I had my coding interview book always out on my desk, and it was like, all right, this is plan B, and increasingly at some point it was looking like plan A, and at some point I had these videos that went viral where I was like, okay, now with this level of traffic, I can actually make a business
Yeah.
on this. So.
I think that's like the important thing with with anyone in whatever field they want to do. It's always like that. There's always a decision you have to make that's scary and you don't know if it's going to work out. But it's like one of those decisions where you have to do it to know if it's like, I'd rather be doing something that I love and not making money than, coding for, whatever.
I mean, to be fair, I actually really enjoyed working as a software engineer. Like I always liked, I guess for me, what I always wanted out of my life was to be making something, was to be creating cool things.
Yeah.
And, as a software engineer, I suppose what I didn't like about that experience was working for a company, was like just having a job. I didn't like having the job. I didn't like, just doing what I was told. But I liked the experience of making, even in high school, like I would make like these little programs, apps, and
it's so crazy because coding is a language in and of itself.
100%. There's
So
a lot of similarities there.
So do you feel like you've always kind of been fascinated with that?
100%. Yeah. Even when I was younger, like, I suppose I always liked writing, I liked programming. The interesting thing about the language stuff is that up until the age of 18 or maybe 19, I never studied any modern language. Like I had zero idea that this was something that I liked or could do.
And that you're good at. Because I think that's something that a lot of people comment on your videos is like, I wish I could like learn a language so easily, or like, how do you do that? I feel like that's probably a common question you get is like, how do you do that? And I do think like some people like are really good at math. And I think some people just, their brains are better at like picking up languages. You also work very hard to pick up new languages and stuff like that. But I think some people just have that kind of gift.
I think it's true. I think it's true that there are differences in talent. Like, and I do think that I do think that talent is a thing when it comes to really any facet of like human endeavors, like, math, language, whatever. But that said, I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit. Like a lot of it is just about belief. A lot of it, like so much more than you might think, is about do you really think that you can do this, and do you really want it? Because I can't tell you how many times in high school, like, because I knew that I always had this vague impression, like I kind of want to learn another language, but it was never really at the top of my, I just had no idea how to do it. And, I had so many false starts in high school. Like I was like, all right, I'm going to learn Spanish now, or like I'm going to learn Chinese. And it would just always fizzle out, And if somebody had asked me in high school, like, are you ever going to learn to speak another language? I would have been like, I've tried, but it doesn't really seem like something that I can really do. But it was only once you're in that environment that you can really where you're in this like self-reinforcing environment where like you learn to say something in Chinese and then you can immediately use it, and then people are like, whoa, you speak Chinese, and then that gives you the motivation and courage to want to go and do it more. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen who like ostensibly aren't talented at learning languages, or like they think they're not, or they're slow or whatever. And then they start learning, and I was like, oh man, they have no chance of learning a language. And then like 3 months later, you come back and they're speaking fluent Mandarin. Yeah. And like, how do they do it? Like, they just kept at it, and they kept using it in situations where they needed to use it. And like all of a sudden, holy crap, they can actually speak this language that they want to learn,
I think that's also the hard thing, and probably another reason why people love watching your videos, because it takes a level of courage to try out a new language to you, something that isn't your first language, because you're going to Chinatown in New York and you're speaking Mandarin or Fujianese or, whatever it is. And as someone who doesn't speak that language, picturing myself trying to test out phrases or trying to talk, it's so nerve-wracking. Yeah. And so just kind of taking that leap of faith and being like, I'm going to try it. If I mess up, it's fine. Yeah. I think that's just like the scary part, and why it's so entertaining, because I think fear is a big reason why people probably don't do that.
100%. A lot of my friends will tell me sometimes when they're watching my videos, they'll get like this level of anxiety where they're watching and they're like, no way, he's actually gonna try and like speak with him. And you're just like so nervous, like, because I think that it's kind of like a vicarious experience where you're watching and then you're like, oh man, I would be so nervous in that situation. But the thing is, the more that you do it, the better you get. The better you get, and the more natural it becomes. I think that trying to have these experiences also, it just makes you a better language learner in a lot of ways, and a better communicator too, I think.
Totally. And like, so this is our second time meeting in person, and I just kind of went out on a limb. Last time I was in New York, it was, I think, March or April of 2020. So it was right before the lockdowns happened, and everyone was like talking about COVID, but no one really knew what was going to happen. And I was in New York, and I was like, I need to hit up Xiaoma. And so I messaged you. I was like, could we get food in Chinatown? Like, I need to do this. And you said yes. We got lunch in Chinatown, and then I was like, what's going to happen with your YouTube if you can't go out, to the places that you normally go if we're all locked down? And I feel like that only opened a wider door for you into new languages, and almost like, because I'm sure for you it must have been kind of scary being like, what's going to happen? But I feel like you kind of had this plan all along.
No, I didn't.
No?
I don't really make like long-term plans.
Yeah.
I just kind of see what works, and then I try to build off that. And I was making these Chinese videos, and at some point, obviously the pandemic started, and I was like, okay, well now, can't really do this type of video anymore. So I was like, all right, well, I guess if I'm just gonna be stuck in my apartment for a while, might as well try and learn Spanish, So I did that.
Was there a reason you chose Spanish first after like Chinese?
Honestly, I just found a really good way to do it. Like, I think there's this company called Baselang that what they do is you pay $150 a month, and it's kind of like, it's like a gym membership.
Yeah.
But you get access to unlimited Spanish tutoring.
Wow.
With teachers from Venezuela. And so I was spending like 8 hours a day talking with Venezuelans online. And that was a crazy experience. I mean, I certainly learned a lot of Spanish from that, but also just like, man, Venezuela, it really has it rough in a lot of ways.
Totally.
But it was cool. It was great.
Yeah, because you were also, I think, using like other apps and things to talk to people from other places. Like I was, before COVID happened, I wanted to learn sign language because my grandma was born deaf and she passed away. But I was like, I realized I had never fully learned sign language. Like my grandma was really good at reading lips because she kind of grew up having to learn how to do that because sign language isn't like, language most people learn. And I was thinking about it. I was like, it's like as if my grandma was Italian or something and she only spoke Italian.
Yeah. And
I was her English or American daughter, and I was like, I'm not going to learn your language, grandma, you know? And so I was like, okay, I want to like learn sign language kind of to honor her or whatever. So I went online. There's a dude, Dr. Bill Vickers. He's like a sign language teacher up in the Bay. So I'm watching all of his YouTube videos, learning sign language. I started going to deaf meetups. And it was, I felt like you. I would like walk in and I was like, what would Xiaoma do? What would Xiaoma do? And it was so nerve wracking because I'm like trying to speak to these people in sign language. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to understand them. I don't know if they're going to understand me. But it was so fun. And it's like that thing where you learn so much about, other people's experiences just based on, trying to speak their language.
Yeah.
Like it's like a very special thing.
How did you find... Because I've thought about my friend Frankie speaks. He's also a native sign language user, and I was thinking about like learning some of it, but I don't how did you find so you went to these deaf meetups and started speaking to people, and I guess what was that experience like? How do you introduce your? I don't know. I get it's just so interesting to me to think about a language where you talk with your hands rather than your.
Yeah, I mean, I think sign language is like one of the coolest languages because it is that thing, and I thought sign language was universal because you're like it is a language with just kind of hands and expressions, and I was like, I'm sure it's just universal, and
like,
they're like,
oh, it's really easy. You just like
yeah, exactly, and it's like so different everywhere you go, and there's so many different signs for like the same word, but you know, when I was on YouTube, I was watching it. I'm like signing to myself, I'm practicing. And so I went to a deaf meetup, and it's hard because you're like looking around, you're like, who's deaf? Because I'm like, I'm just waiting for someone to like do some hand movement. So I'm like, okay, here's the deaf group, whatever. And I was like the second one there, and there's just kind of this old guy sitting. And I just like turned to him and I was like, are you like deaf? And he was like, yeah. And he starts talking to me, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm like, I only know a little bit of sign language. Like, I'm hearing, like, whatever. And
it's so cool.
They were just so helpful and like so chill. There's this one dude, Eric, who was born deaf, and then I think he got like cochlear implants. And so he can like, he was kind of being my translator and like helping me. And he was like, what do you do for work? And I was like, I don't know how to say comedian in sign language. And I don't even think there's like a real sign for it for that job. So I'm just like, I don't know, I tell jokes. And he like came to my show, and it was so fun, like just building those relationships from learning the language. But I mean, it's the same as any other language, like trying to just do it. But I like stopped learning, and so now it's like so bad.
You'd be surprised though if you revisit a language that you've studied even for a little bit in the past, it comes back pretty quickly.
Yeah. So now I feel like you've done so many languages.
Yeah.
Since starting with the Spanish. You were speaking Arabic, I believe?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried speaking Hebrew?
Never.
Okay.
That was a fun one, because this is another thing where like people might be like, oh man, you know, Xiaoma's like such a language genius, could pick up any language in like 5 seconds. The thing is, in high school, like it's so much is about the environment and like your motivation. Because I spent 7 years in Hebrew school, 8 years ostensibly learning Hebrew, and I can't speak a word of it to this day. Like,
really?
Nothing.
No one in your family speaks it?
No. So I don't know. Like, you know, I feel like it's so much of it is about how much you want it and how you're taught. Because like just kind of sitting in class with the book and having the teacher tell you this means that, this means that. It just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything, you know? And if the kid doesn't want to learn it, like, nothing's going to happen. It isn't, you know?
Yeah. I like to think that I'm someone who can pick up languages kind of easily. Like, if I'm traveling, like, I went to Italy on a school trip, and by the end of it, I felt like, you know, a little Italian princess. I was, like, ordering in Italian, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I was like, okay, that was like a fluke. Maybe it's just close enough to, you know, Spanish where whatever. And then I went to Israel for like a month, and I was like picking up Hebrew, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I feel like I want to practice more learning different languages, because if it's something that I'm like decent at, I might as well. It would be a shame to waste it.
It depends. It depends on what you want. You know, it's always what I tell people who like want to learn a language. Like, can you use it like in your day-to-day life? Like, is it something that is going to be of value to you? Because it's really hard, I think, to keep the motivation, you know, and to like get up to that level. Like, it just is very like, you know, you could be a dilettante and just like study this language for, you know, a week, that language for a week, and but to really have the motivation to get yourself to a level of fluency, it just takes a lot of effort and a lot of motivation, a lot of like self-determination to want to do that. So
that's true. And I feel like I mean, in New York it's different. Like, I'll be on the train and I'll hear someone say something in Hebrew, and I'm like, oh, I wish I like understood more, because I love eavesdropping. But yeah, in LA, I feel like I don't hear that as often. But like, do you get that same feeling where like if you're walking around and you hear someone speaking like Mandarin, you're like, oh, I want to like say hi, or like, ooh, I know what they're saying?
No, well, because with Chinese, it's just like I don't feel. There's no emotion for me anymore in that sense, because it's just like such a part of my life where like I feel like almost Chinese in that way.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it's just like, oh, this is like I speak it every, you know, I mean, my wife is Chinese. We go to Chinese place all the time. Like it's not something.
It's not as like exciting anymore.
Yeah. It's just like, I think obviously for an audience watching me speak Chinese, it's like, oh wow, I speak Chinese. But you know, for me, it's just like, it's like English. It's just like whatever.
Yeah. Hi, sorry to interrupt this incredible episode, but I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's podcast, one of the sponsors of today's podcast, Billy. You might be thinking, what the heck is Billy? Well, let me tell you, my legs have never been smoother. I just used Billy's. Okay, Billy is a shaving product. It's a razor. It's you can get it anywhere really. But if you want to support me and Billy and the pod, go to billy.com/AllieMac and you can get the starter kit for $9 plus free shipping always. That's BILLIE.com/ALIMAC. I really like their razor. It has, I mean, this isn't like the biggest perk of it, but I think it's very cool. It comes with like you know how some razors you can like put little suction cups up on the shower and like have it hold there? This one uses like a magnet. It's the most insane thing. It's so small. And also the razor's really soft. Like I always get bumps when I shave. But with Billy, it's very like moisturizing and nourishing and creamy. And I got the shaving cream with it and it makes my legs extra soft and it smells good. I love it, especially as someone who doesn't enjoy shaving because it makes me feel like I'm a gymnast with my leg up all high on the thing. You know, I just want it to be the easiest shave possible, and I truly love Billy. It's a great product. What else do I like? Oh, you know how like you know how most razors like this is what's so okay, sorry, it's all hitting me. It's early. I'm recording this early. It's early for me. It's like noon. I was shaving and as soon as I opened the Billy package, the razor first of all is like a different material like than other razors. I don't know how to describe it. It's like soft. The handle is like soft. I don't know that would be like something that I would normally think is exciting, but I do. It's really nice to just hold, which I never thought was like important about razors, but I enjoy it. And also the cool thing about Billy is that there's no pink tax, which means like normally when you go shopping and you go looking for razors, there's like the men's razors and the women's. For whatever reason, even though it's the exact same razor, the women's razor happens to be like, I forget what the percentage is, but the women's like grooming products are more expensive. It's called a pink tax. For whatever reason, tampons are more expensive. Not that there's like men's tampons, but like tampons should be free. That's a separate issue. But Billy does not have a pink tax on it. So you're getting it for dudes' prices. And what's better than stealing from men? Nothing. Get Billy's razor. Go to billy.com/AllieMac. BILLIE.com/ALIMAC. It's just $9 to get a starter pack. Plus free shipping always. Do it. Get it. Support me. Support Billy. Support your hairy legs. And whatever else needs shaving. Your happy trail, Billy's got you covered. I have an insane happy trail. Didn't even know women could get them, but I shave it off. I used to think I would never shave it off because I was like, that's gross. I need to like wax it or something. I use Billy. Comes off smooth. Mr. Miyagi. Okay. Billy.com/AllieMac. Back to the podcast. I also realized, does this happen to you when you're learning a new language that like you start dreaming in that language?
Not. I usually no. I think with languages that you need to get to that subconscious level, you need to spend more time than I'll typically do with languages that I like newer languages that I study.
Yeah.
But you gotta really spend a lot of time to get there. But I've had quite a few dreams in Chinese for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, because I've watched a lot of your videos and I feel like, you know, every language, there's almost like a way, like a different cadence to how you speak, you know? Like if you're speaking Hebrew, there's a different cadence than if you're speaking English. When you're speaking Chinese, it's definitely a different cadence. It's like a much faster. And I noticed in your videos, like there's kind of this, I mean, it might be you, but I feel like maybe it's like something that you learned by studying in Beijing or whatever, but like there's almost this like repetitive kind of nature to it. Where like I feel like you'll repeat a word, or like when my favorite is when you're like mail, 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 mail.
It's just
I don't know if that's like just your little flair on it, like something that you do, or if maybe that's like common with the language.
It's I don't know. I think it's easier. I think it's a good way to, because part of like learning a language and part of speaking. So I mean, what I do with these videos mostly is I'll learn the language for, just a few weeks. Like in most cases, less than 20 hours total of study time, and then go and use it. And if you want to try to speak to somebody in a language, having studied for less than 20 hours, like you have to. There's extralingual methods that you have to use in order to be able to talk with them. So your hands become very important. Your body language becomes important. You have to like almost act in a certain way in order to get your point across, because just pure linguistically, like if you had to just write to them or like just stand perfectly still and flat and unemotionally communicate your point, like it would be way harder than if you can double up on a word for emphasis, or like those kind of things, or point to stuff. So all that matters in this game of language battling that you're playing.
Yeah, it's so wild. I love how humble you get. It's my favorite part when people are like, you speak Chinese so well, and you're like, no, I don't. And then you're just like, you're practically a fluent. I mean, like, you might as well be Chinese at this point.
Well, you have to, I
think, is that part of the culture, is like being humble, or is that just like you being nice?
Chinese is very interesting because this is something specific to Chinese culture, where if you get complimented in Chinese, it's considered somewhat rude to say like thank you, like oh you speak such good Chinese. Well, thank you.
You're like you damn don't. Right.
It's like you're exactly. Yeah. It's like an English saying, you speak such good Chinese. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
You're right.
You're right.
Yeah,
true.
I am.
Right. You don't typically. You try to like negate. You try to deflect the compliment as much as possible. So, and there's many strategies in Chinese for doing that. You could say like, what are you talking about? Or like, no, I don't. Or you could say, oh, my teacher's really good. Or like, there's ways to like deflect that compliment.
Yeah. I also love. What was I gonna say? Oh, I love. It's so special being able to speak another language, because I feel like so many times when you're at a restaurant or whatever making a video, the person you're speaking to in whatever language it is, they're like, oh my gosh, that's incredible that you can speak that. Like my kid doesn't even speak that well, because a lot of times I don't know, I think it's very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I know.
I want to see if there's any yeah, you're damn right. Yeah. I want to see if there's any questions that people sent in. Isn't it so nice that New York is like more open now?
It's amazing.
Did you feel overwhelmed at all? Like, oh no, it's all happening again? Or were you just like ready for it?
COVID?
Well, like I felt like for me with comedy, with the lockdown, like I can do Zoom shows, but those aren't fun. I can't like tour and travel and do stand up. For you were able to find a way to like continue making videos and stuff. But I know for me, it was almost like this transition back into regular life, where I was like, oh my God, I got so used to like being a couch potato that now I have to like put pants on and like talk.
Yeah, to be honest, for me, after maybe the first like 2 or 3 months, it was kind of back to normal in terms of making, and the only difference was that everybody was wearing masks.
Yeah.
But because the majority of my videos I make in New York City, and then I did go to Mexico once or twice.
Yeah.
But Mexico.
You were in Tulum?
Yeah, Tulum and Cancun.
Which one was your favorite out of the two?
I really I ended up going to this little village called Senor, which is like a Mayan village, and I spent like a week there in this tiny little Mayan village where everybody speaks the Mayan language, with Yucatec Maya, which is like a totally different language from Spanish. And that was so exciting to like because you're in Mexico, but it's like Maya town. Yeah. It's like a very different culture. It's really cool.
Do you feel like when you learn a new language, I was thinking about this last night, I was like, it almost feels like you have a secret. Like you have like a key and when you learn the language, it feels like kind of unlocking the secret door where you're like, I can now step into this.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you know, when people ask like, "Oh, what age are you from?" Like are you like a 19th century, like 15th century Victorian or whatever? Um, it almost feels like in the 17th century when they were going around like discovering all these little islands and stuff, and it was like this is like new to like the world. Like that's how I feel a lot of times with languages. Like I just love like being like one of the few people, the few non-natives in the world to be able to like for me that's so incredible.
Yeah.
Like if I could learn like I'm trying to think I mean with Navajo recently, right? So I went out to the Southwest to learn Navajo and
Yeah, where
and
did
talk
you
with
end
them
up
there.
going?
So I went to New Mexico, and
Okay.
then the Navajo nation, the Navajo Indian Reservation is it it it's in Arizona and New
Yeah.
Mexico, and that was just crazy because like there's not that many like non Navajo people who speak Navajo, and then when you try and go and learn it, and there's only 300,000 people in the entire world that speak Navajo. Like
Yeah.
it's just such a and then if you go and learn that and try to talk to people, like it's like crazy because you feel like you're getting this kind of access to a culture that is it's so small, and it's so like it's like almost like secret knowledge.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Okay, another interruption. I'm sorry, but this one is very, very, very exciting. I've been talking about this for a long time. I had to interrupt the pod to say this. This is a big deal. If you've been listening to the pod since day one, you know this is a big deal. Guess what, baby? I got Liquid Death supporting me. It's finally happened. We got Liquid Death. I love it. I don't need to like go into it, but I am because I love it. I've been a day one OG death head. I remember I was at my sister's friend's like birthday party or something, and I don't drink. I'm a sober gal. And at the party, everyone was like drinking their little mimosas. They're having like a white girl pool celebration. They're drinking their mimosas. They're having their White Claws. My sister's friend offers me a Liquid Death. And I'm like, dude, I don't drink. Why are you handing me a tall boy of this knockoff Modelo brand? And he's like, no, it's water. And I'm like, I see this tall boy. I've done the tall boy days in my time. I've done the tall boy days in my time. I don't think that makes sense. But I'm like, I know what this is. You're tricking me. You want me to get turned up off this tall boy. He's like, no, seriously, it's straight up just like mountain spring water. And I'm like, okay, nice party trick, dude. So I'm like turning the can, looking at it, reading it, checking the ingredients, and it says it's water. But in my head, I'm like, this is one of those pack of gums where you like pull a stick of gum and you get electrocuted. I'm like, he's trying to do something. I don't know what this is, but he's like, I swear, I promise, it's just water. So I'm like, all right. So I drink it and I'm like, oh shit, like this is just water. And it was nice because it's in an aluminum can. Like it straight up is a tall boy can of water, just with like the most aggressive branding to make it look like you're an insane alcoholic. And so I was drinking the water. I'm like, this is incredible. I need to shotgun it. So I shotgun the water. Didn't realize how much harder it is to shotgun water than it is to shotgun beer, but somehow water is more difficult to, drain the pipe. And ever since then, I was hooked. I kept getting more. I ordered it in bulk. I got these giant packages. And the great thing about it is that I would just like keep it hidden in my room, because it's an aluminum can. So if my room is like a decent temperature, the water is going to be a nice temperature. You know how plastic gets all nasty. There's like phthalates in plastic. I was talking about that on the last episode. It makes your taint smaller or some crazy shit like that. Don't get plastic. It can't even be recycled anymore. Did you know that? Plastic can't even like really break down anymore. I don't know. I heard that somewhere. Plastic's bad. Aluminum, way easier to recycle, better for the environment, easier to drink. When you have water in a tall boy, you're like, I gotta finish this. This feels like a challenge. And I always drink way more water when I have Liquid Death nearby. So find it at any 7-Eleven, Whole Foods. They're getting everywhere. They're becoming big time. They're big time, baby. So get it anywhere. Or if you go to liquiddeath.com/AllieMac, you can get a free set of koozies with your first order of any case of water. Or just grab some at Whole Foods or 7-Eleven, whatever. But I think you should do it online /AllieMac. Let them know that you guys are listening. Let them know you guys support. And get it. Chug it. Drink it in the car. Try and get pulled over. I dare you to. Just chug it in the car. Go to a babysitting job with it. Do whatever you need to do. Go to liquiddeath.com/AllieMac. Shout out to Liquid Death. I've been an OG death head. So I'm glad you guys are finally turning around and recognizing me, putting some respect on my name. liquiddeath.com/AllieMac. Okay, back to the podcast. Thank you, Liquid Death. Okay, let me see these questions. Oh, I wanted to ask, what are your recommendations for Chinese food in New York?
I have a lot.
List them, rattle them out.
Depends on what you like. Yeah, so I mean, first of all, you want to go to Flushing.
Okay.
Because Flushing is the best Chinese
Isn't
food.
that where The Nanny's from? The show The Nanny with Fran Drescher? I think in the intro song, that used to be my favorite show.
Yeah.
In the intro song, it's like talking about Flushing, Queens.
It's in Queens, yeah. So
Hell
that's where it is.
Okay, The Nanny.
Yeah, so Flushing, and once you're in Flushing, it's cool because Flushing is probably the closest you can come to China without actually going to China.
Really?
Yeah, it's very, like, Chinatown is mostly like an older kind of Cantonese generation. It's also pretty touristy. But if you go to Flushing, it's like just China. It's like being in China. The food is incredible. You can walk around, you can go to different stands and try like street foods, and the restaurants are incredible.
So just anywhere in Flushing.
People on the street selling stuff. Yeah, and you have to find a place that looks like it has like, just walk around Flushing and just look for crowds of Chinese people like standing in line for things, or just, bustling places, and it's usually a good guide to where the food is good.
Yeah. Do you live in Flushing?
I don't. I wish I did sometimes. No.
Do you have any tips or hacks for learning a new language?
Yeah, I mean, so kind of a general rule of advice is to just speak as much as possible. I think for a few reasons. One, it's just an effective way to learn a language, but the other, because I think the most important thing when you're learning a language is really like the active recall. So it's actively trying to dredge stuff up from your brain, right? And it's trying to force yourself to recall what you learned. Because if you're just sitting and you're just watching something or you're reading something, it's going to be difficult it's a much slower process, right? But let's say you're doing flashcards, and the flashcard has English on one side, and then it has the Chinese on the other. And when you read the English, your task is to be able to have to say the Chinese sentence, and you can't progress to the next flashcard until you say that Chinese sentence. That's going to be a much faster way than just having like a book that has a list of Chinese sentences and you're just reading them.
Yeah.
Right. So the flashcard and speaking. That's why speaking is also very valuable, because if we're having a conversation and somebody asks you a question in Chinese, you don't just sit there and say, good question. Like, you have to respond to the question now, right? So it forces you to actively recall and make that sense.
Yeah, that's what I realized when I was learning sign language. I was like, okay, I'm understanding the vocabulary. I know how to put my own sentences together. But then when I went to the deaf meetups, I was like, oh my, it's all happening so fast. Yeah. They're like asking me questions that I never watched on the YouTube channel. And so I'm like, okay, and then I also realized like I could go on Omegle, the like random chat website, and type in for special interest sign language or ASL, and then all of a sudden I'm connected to all these people who speak sign language.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to talk to native speakers, like to find people to chat with online. So Omegle, VR chat, this website, Ome TV. I've made videos on this website. You can find people who speak like any language. There's also language tutoring websites too. Like italki or Preply, and you just verbling. Right?
How do you feel about Duolingo?
I don't. I mean, look, like it's not like the most efficient and effective way to learn a language, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people find it really fun. And I've never really used it, but people seem to find it like fun and enjoyable. And if that's something that you consistently spend time on, then you're gonna learn something. Right?
Yeah, so. I like Omegle because you can, face chat with them, and then 1 in every 10 people who speak sign language is just some weird horny dude jacking off, and you're like, I needed a break. That was the perfect time for a break.
Even with sign language in the
interest? Because sometimes if
not enough.
Yeah, if there's not enough people with that special interest, then you're just back into the general public, and you're like, no, I'm not ready.
Right.
Have you heard any good shit talking during your escapades? I don't know why they called it escapades, but
people always ask this, and it's just like it's always a fun idea. Like, I guess like you can learn a language now. You can tell people are like secretly gossiping about you. To be honest, it doesn't really happen. At least with Chinese, like I think that I can't really recall like an instance where somebody said something. To be fair, I think a lot of it now is because people know me from my videos, and so it's like,
Also, it's such a funny thing because it's like if someone was talking shit about me in English nearby, I would be so hurt. I'm like, I don't want to learn another language just so I can like hurt my own feelings.
I will tell you this though, it is a very great secret language to talk shit about other people. So like if we're at a restaurant, and like there's this couple, the other right next to us who I want to talk about, or like they're kind of weird, or like they're interesting in some way, like I can just talk to my wife about them in this like secret code that we have. And I was actually thinking about it this morning because I was doing that again, and I was like, man, if I only spoke English, like how do people do, like if you're at a restaurant, like how do you do that if you don't speak another language? If you're at a restaurant and there's like something interesting at the table about the people at the table right next to you, how can you secretly talk about them with your dining companion?
You have to just wait until the ride home. You have to like sit on this.
I know, you're just like, oh my God.
When you like turn to your friend and you're like, just remember what they look like at the table next to us. We'll talk about it later.
Or I was thinking like do you have to like write things out on like a notepad and then just be like, hey, check this out.
Check your text messages.
Yeah, exactly. Check your text messages.
Are you an American heartthrob in China? Oh yeah, I'm curious. Like when you look at your YouTube analytics, I imagine most of it is from the U.S. But like, what is the highest country outside of the U.S. in terms of like watching?
Right now, I mean, it does depend on the video. But I'd say for my language learning videos right now, it's mostly English-speaking countries, right? So U.S., UK, and U.S. is naturally the biggest proportion because most people. But Philippines too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I made some videos about Filipino stuff a while back, like giving people Filipino street food, and I got quite popular in the Philippines for a while. It was an interesting experience. Yeah.
So do you think you're an American heartthrob in the Philippines or China?
In the Philippines, maybe. In China, yeah. Although China, this is really a very long story, but I actually started out making videos just in China.
Yeah.
And I started out making videos just on a Chinese, the Chinese YouTube, the Chinese video sharing site called Bilibili.
Wait, they have their own YouTube?
Yeah. Well, YouTube is blocked in China.
What?
Yeah, completely blocked.
No way.
Well, I mean, almost every major Western media. So like YouTube, Facebook, Google, Gmail, Wikipedia, Twitter, all blocked in China. So there's local clones of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I did my friend's podcast the other day, and they were, how like BTS is very popular and like just South Korean, like, celebrities and pop stars and stuff. We were watching this video. They showed me like this North Korean pop group, and it's like the song. It's like all these ladies.
Oh, where they were marching?
Yeah,
I saw
and they're
that video.
just like, and they're like singing. They're like, studying is good.
Yeah.
Everyone should learn about North Korean history.
You know, I actually applied for a visa to go to North Korea
And what
recently. In order to do it, you have like Americans aren't typically allowed to go to North Korea.
And you're like, but I'm Xiaoma.
Well,
bitch.
you have to apply for a special passport. Like literally, you have to send an application to the State Department, like special visas at state.gov to get a visa, and it has to be in the national interest of the United States. So you have to write this email saying why your trip to North Korea is in the national interest of the United States. So
you're like, I'm a pretty popular YouTuber. I'm gonna spread the good word of North Korea.
So I was like,
there will be no slander in my videos.
Right. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do cross-cultural, communication, like learning Korean, and then talking to people in North Korea. I was like, man, this is gonna be really cool if I get this. But I got the email back like a couple weeks later. It was like a very formal, like, something so-and-so at United States Department of State being like, after careful review, we have determined that your visit to North Korea is not in the national interest of the United States. It was like, this is our final determination.
I feel like if there's anyone who should be able to go to North Korea and make a video about
that's what I thought.
it.
And they were like, right on the website, it says, if you're like a journalist or a reporter, this may qualify as national interest. So I was like, I'm kind of like a journalist, right? A little bit, like, so I don't know. I agree. I think it's very much in the national interest of the United States that I go to North Korea.
Yeah. We're gonna start a hashtag. We're gonna start a petition.
Hashtag free Xiaoma.
Yeah. What did you expect going to the Navajo reservation, and what surprised you the most about it?
To be honest, I had no idea what to expect because, it was so completely like alien to anything I had ever experienced before. Like I guess I was growing up, I was vaguely aware that Native American tribes and Native Americans were still a thing in this country, and people spoke those languages, but I didn't know if people like really spoke them, or like was it just like a thing, like did the culture still exist? But going there, it just made like we stayed with a Native American family really like out there in the desert.
How did that get set up?
Through my tutor.
Oh, okay.
Through the person who was teaching me. And she was like, hey, you would really like meeting this family and staying with them. And I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. And so we went out there. The dad was a traditional medicine man, and so he was like doing these really late night ceremonies with us where they would like take the ash out of the fireplace and like do this, and we couldn't get any of it for the video because it's like sacred.
Special, yeah.
But it was so cool experiencing that, and also just how like religious they are and how spiritual. Like when we were leaving, they were like, "Oh my God, it was so nice having you here. If you ever need anything, just like message us on Facebook and we'll pray for you." And in the Navajo ceremony, and it was so that they like do the peyote ceremonies and everything. And
did you do peyote?
No, I wish they do. It's really cool. So they have actually a federal exception where they are like, it's totally legal for them to do peyote because it's part of their religion.
Yeah.
But for me, seeing that and experiencing their religion was like, it was just, I was like, wow, this is so cool that because I think the history of like, Native Americans in this country is so fucked up where it's just it's so sad to me that probably like less than a million people in this country actually speak a Native American language now.
Yeah.
And there's like, they're just like, the numbers are so reduced, and but to actually go there and experience, like, there's real like stores and there's real places and people where you can go and people still use this language as like a means of communication, and in a lot of ways it feels like the real American culture, and the original American culture.
Yeah.
And it was like I was like, wow, this because you think like, oh, it's like Christianity and English just like wiped it all out, but it's like still like it's still there, it's just so amazing to get to experience that. It was so amazing, so cool.
How many languages do you know? Like, how many would you say that you're like fluent in?
Yeah, really just 3. So English, Mandarin, and Spanish.
Okay.
But in terms of how many languages I've studied, it's a lot at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 10, maybe 20. I don't know.
Were there any languages that you found to be like easier to pick up? Or
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, there's a big difference. Some languages are really hard.
did you feel like Spanish was pretty easy to pick up?
Yeah, yes. It's not. I don't think Spanish is the easiest language.
You don't?
But no,
What do you think's the easiest language?
Indonesian.
No way.
Yeah, as weird as that might sound.
But do you think that that's because you had learned other languages before, so maybe there was almost like...
No, it's just a simpler language to learn.
Oh, interesting.
Less conjugations, grammar simpler. The way that certain words are formed is super super elegant, and it just like you'll just double up a word to say like the word for time, you just double it, and that means sometimes, like things like that.
Yeah. Because I feel like with Spanish, I was like, oh, this is easy because it's almost like a math equation with Spanish where it's like there's, I don't know, something about Spanish. I was like, okay, this makes sense, but conjugating, don't even get me started. If it's, I speak in Spanish. If I'm speaking to someone who speaks Spanish, I have to say I speak like a 5-year-old and I say everything in present tense. So if it's past tense, I'll just like do a little sign like a long time ago.
That's the problem with Spanish, and then you have to use subjunctive and future. Like I think Spanish gets like this reputation as the easy language, but I think relative to most languages in this world that you could learn, it's for Americans is relatively easier, but it's definitely not a cakewalk.
Yeah. What's it? What?
Not a cakewalk.
Oh, I thought okay, and not a cakewalk. Yeah. Do you ever get tired of fish balls? The way that I just said that made me think it sounded so inappropriate. Like made me sound like you're eating actual fish balls. Yeah. Ball sacks.
Like the South Park episode with Kanye West and
fish sticks.
Fish sticks, yeah.
Is that your favorite thing to order?
Fish balls are actually, funny enough, they're not my favorite food because to be honest, I don't think that most of them at least in New York City, Chinatown, are particularly good because a lot of them are kind of like mass manufactured and they're not like, when you get like a fresh handmade fish ball, it tastes way, way better because the like lower quality mass produced fish balls are kind of tough and rubbery, but when you get like a nicer fresh one, it can be really good.
Are you ever like, okay, I'm gonna make a video like going to a restaurant and you're like, fuck, I'm not hungry at all?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. Yeah.
That's how I eat every meal. I'm like, I'm not hungry, but I'm committing to eating.
You have to do it.
And then I'm like, why did I gain 10 pounds during COVID?
Yeah.
Hold on. I want to get a good one, Someone was like, how is this happening? But having you on the pod?
Yeah.
I don't know either. What's the next language you're going to learn?
I've been spending the past week learning Punjabi. Wow. Yeah. And I was originally going to make the video today, but I think I'm going to do it tomorrow. Okay. Now, yeah, so I'm going to go that's a really cool one because there's a lot of Sikhs in New York. And I just thought to myself, like, I just haven't seen anybody learn Punjabi as like I mean, even Hindi, it's pretty rare for people to try to go learn that. Yeah. And for Punjabi though, I feel like is even more like, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. So yeah. Well, if you need a sign language tutor, don't hit me up. Yeah. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was a blast for me. For having me. Do you want to plug anything? Shout anything out? No, I mean, if you're interested in checking my videos out, you could go to Xiaoma NYC on YouTube. Xiaoma NYC. Yeah. Check it out. Find something. Find a language you like. Yeah. Watch the video. I think one of my favorites is the one where you go to the nail salon. Yeah. Because it is one of those things, as a lady who gets her nails done often, you do always think like they've got to be talking shit about me. What are they talking about? Yeah, what are they saying? I took my boyfriend to get his nails done for the first time, and he was like loving it. But the first thing he said, he was like, do you think they're talking shit about me right now? And I'm like, no. Yeah, the answer is probably not. Probably not. And I'm like, you can also tell if they are, because they'll kind of look at you. They'll give you like a side eye and then look at their friend. And then they'll be like, and you're like, now I know. They don't like my color choice. I think it'd be really fun to redo that video with a white girl who speaks perfect Vietnamese.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish
Someone should do that video. Anyone out there watching this who like speaks Vietnamese really well, like, good.
I wish I could. I would love to do that, but unfortunately, I'm not fluent.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. It was nice seeing you guys. And that's it. Bye.
Oh my